For as long as humans have gathered, we have known fermentation. A forgotten piece of fruit, a stray bit of grain left in water nature's alchemy, was always there, waiting. This discovery, likely an accident thousands of years ago, gave us alcohol. It became a source of calories, a social lubricant, and a sacred element in rituals across the globe. From the ale of ancient Sumerians to the wine of the Roman Empire, it was woven into the very fabric of civilization. But intertwined with this history is a darker thread, a story of struggle, misunderstanding, and immense suffering. This is the history of alcoholism. To understand this story, we must first be clear. We are not just talking about drinking. We are talking about alcohol use disorder, what we commonly call alcoholism. It is a chronic disease characterized by an impaired ability to stop or control alcohol use despite adverse social, occupational, or health consequences. It's not a choice or a moral failing. It's a complex illness that hijacks the brain's fundamental systems of reward, motivation, and self-control. For most of human history, though, this distinction did not exist. Heavy drinking was often seen simply as a vice, a sign of a weak will or a flawed character. In many societies, drunkenness was either celebrated or condemned, but the idea of an underlying compulsion was rarely considered. Think of the ancient Greeks, who worshipped Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy, yet also prized moderation. They saw excessive drinking as a personal failure to maintain balance, not as a medical condition. This moralistic view would dominate for centuries. Punishments were often social, religious, or even legal, but the root cause remained unexamined. The person was seen as the problem, not a disease within the person. The real shift in thinking began to stir in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, a period of immense social and scientific change. In the newly formed United States, a prominent physician named Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, turned his attention to what he called the intemperate use of ardent spirits. In 1784, he published a pamphlet that was revolutionary for its time. He was among the first to argue that chronic drunkenness was not just a sin, but a progressive disease. He described it, detailing its effects on the body and mind, and even created a moral and physical thermometer to illustrate the stages from temperance to death. Rush proposed sobriety and even created a specific diet to treat what he saw as a physical ailment. He was a man far ahead of his time, planting the seeds of the medical model. But society wasn't quite ready. Instead, the 19th century gave rise to the massive temperance movement. Fueled by religious revivalism and social reform concerns, the movement initially promoted moderation, but quickly hardened into a call for total abstinence. Its leaders painted a grim picture of alcohol as the source of all societal ills: poverty, crime, domestic violence, and moral decay. While their intentions were often to protect families and communities, their rhetoric reinforced the idea of the drinker as a moral degenerate. The focus was on eliminating the substance, not on understanding the person's struggle. This crusade culminated in the United States with the 18th Amendment in 1920, launching the era of prohibition. The great experiment to cure the nation by banning alcohol failed spectacularly, driving drinking underground and fueling organized crime. But it showed just how deeply the issue was embedded in the public consciousness. While the temperance movement raged, a different conversation was happening in the nascent field of psychiatry. Physicians began to observe a pattern of obsessive-compulsive drinking that defied simple explanations of immorality. They coined a new term, dipsomania, from the Greek for thirst madness. This was a crucial step. It framed the problem as a form of insanity, a mental affliction rather than a simple character flaw. This led to the creation of the first institutions dedicated to treating alcoholics, often called inebriate asylums. While the name sounds harsh to our modern ears, they represented a significant departure from simply throwing people in jail. However, the cures were often brutal and ineffective. Patients might be subjected to hydrotherapy, isolation, or even treatments with toxic substances meant to induce vomiting at the sight or smell of alcohol, a primitive form of aversion therapy. Progress was slow and relapses were common, reinforcing public skepticism. The true turning point, the moment that would fundamentally change the lives of millions, arrived not from a laboratory or a legislature, but from a meeting between two men in Akron, Ohio in 1935, Bill Wilson, a New York stockbroker whose life and career had been shattered by his uncontrollable drinking, met Dr. Bob Smith, a surgeon who was on the verge of losing his practice for the same reason. Bill had found a way to stay sober through principles of self-examination, admitting powerlessness and helping others. He shared his experience with Dr. Bob, who, after one final drink, never drank again. From this simple act of one person helping another, Alcoholics Anonymous was born. AA offered a radically new approach. It was a fellowship, not a hospital. It had no doctors, no fees, and no hierarchy in the traditional sense. Its program, the 12 Steps, provided a framework for spiritual and character development. It offered community, understanding, and a shared solution based on lived experience. For the first time, people struggling with alcoholism were not patients to be cured or sinners to be condemned, but members of a group who could find recovery together. Its success was undeniable, and its principles would influence countless other recovery programs. The founding of AA marked the moment the conversation shifted from "how do we fix them" to "how can we help each other heal?" As AA grew, science continued to advance. Researchers began to unravel the complex neurobiology of addiction. They discovered how alcohol affects the brain, specifically its impact on neurotransmitters. They learned that chronic alcohol use physically alters brain chemistry. It enhances the effects of GABA, the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter, which creates the sedative, anxiety-reducing effects of alcohol. At the same time, it blocks glutamate, an excitatory neurotransmitter. To compensate, the brain reduces its own GABA production and increases glutamate receptors, creating a state of hyperexcitability. This is what causes the dangerous symptoms of alcohol withdrawal, like tremors, anxiety, and seizures. When a person stops drinking, simultaneously, alcohol floods the brain's reward circuit with dopamine, the chemical of pleasure and motivation. This creates a powerful positive reinforcement loop. The brain learns that alcohol equals reward. Over time, this pathway becomes so ingrained that the brain prioritizes alcohol over everything else: food, relationships, and survival itself. This is not a metaphor. It is a measurable physical change in the organ of choice. This scientific understanding validated what members of AA had known for decades, that alcoholism is a powerful, baffling disease that overrides willpower. This knowledge has transformed treatment. Today, the approach is multifaceted. Medically supervised detoxification helps manage the dangerous withdrawal period. Medications can help reduce cravings or block the pleasurable effects of alcohol. Therapy, whether individual or group, helps people develop coping skills, address underlying trauma, and rebuild their lives. Peer support groups like AA remain a cornerstone of recovery for millions. We have moved from a one-size-fits-all model of moral condemnation to a personalized approach that treats the whole person, their biology, their psychology, and their social environment. The history of alcoholism is the history of a search for understanding. It's a journey from seeing a sin to recognizing a sickness. It's a story that has unfolded in town squares, in laboratories, in church basements, and in quiet conversations between two people sharing their deepest pain. We have come so far, but the stigma has not vanished entirely. It lingers in our jokes, in our judgments, and in our reluctance to see the person behind the disease. But by understanding this history, we understand that compassion, community, and science are the most powerful tools we have. The story is not over. It continues with every person who finds the courage to ask for help, and with every person who offers it without judgment. Thanks for joining us on History of Things. If you found this story meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into the past. See you next time.